Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Christina Langell. With me today is our Northeast Regional Editor, Kristen Smith. Kristen, PJM, the regional power grid, recently had a meeting where its members voted on several different proposals, none of which worked out. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's going on with the power situation in all these states?
Well, we're basically in the same place we were the last several years, since we've realized that data centers are going to require a lot more power than we have to give. PJM covers 10 states now in the Mid-Atlantic and Midwest region. And so it's a big deal for about 67 million people. And the issue at hand is that we don't have enough supply, and all of the different developers and generation providers and utility companies and everybody who would be involved in making and supplying this power, they can't really seem to agree on the best way forward as far as getting new supply up and running in order to make sure that we're not facing blackouts and really high electricity rates and a lot of other big problems that would be incredibly disruptive. So you'd think 12 proposals, that's a lot, right? They've got to come to an agreement on one of them. No, they didn't get a majority agreement on any of them. Some of the attendees that talked to the Center Square explained that the big problem was that all the proposals came from different sides, and so they all had what was in their best interest. The Center Square spoke in particular with the Natural Resources Defense Council, and they're an advocacy group. And they worked on a proposal with Senator Katie Fry-Hester from Maryland. She's a Democrat, and theirs didn't get any support either. But obviously they said that they were in the meeting, and, whether you were a renewable energy company or say you represented natural gas plants, or you were Constellation Energy, there, like I said, anybody that you could imagine involved in this, they just had their own ideas about how we should move forward. And the problem is, now, because there's been no consensus, they're leaving it to PJM's board of directors to basically cobble together its best plan.
So you mentioned, renewables and natural gas. I imagine nuclear is in the mix in there too. A lot of Pennsylvania leaders like to call it an all of the above energy state. How do you think that this will impact Pennsylvania? And do you think that it's among the more resourced states in the grid?
Pennsylvania is a really big outlier in all of this. It's part of why we've had such a hard time getting our arms around programs that would limit carbon emissions without strangling our energy production, because we provide 25% of the power for the grid in our region. So it's not just us who rely on it. It's all of the states around us. And we're a big part of why natural gas is affordable. We're a big part of why there's a lot of supply in, say, the DC area or New Jersey and Maryland and all these really population heavy centers that need a lot of power. We're the source for them. So if we have less of those generation resources that we think of as always being available to us, like nuclear power, like natural gas, if we have less of those because we're trying to prioritize renewable development as a way to address our climate goals, there is a huge fear, particularly on the coast and in those states, that we're going to have a lot of reliability concerns, blackouts, and the prices are going to skyrocket, because in the PJM footprint, you tend to have cheaper prices in the western part of it. So that's more like the Ohio region. And then moving towards the east is where it gets more and more expensive, right? Because the demand is higher over there and the supply is coming from the west. So at the same time, all of those states have very different ideas about what is the best power source that they should use. So in Pennsylvania, obviously, we want to incentivize our energy industry. So that would mean not strangleholding natural gas in any way, but also supporting renewable development. It's a very hard balance that we quite haven't figured out yet. But then you have states with really aggressive clean energy targets, such as New Jersey and Maryland, for example. And that also involves where they get their supply from. So they're not going to want to take it from, say, a natural gas plant because they don't want to contribute to carbon emissions. But they need to find another way to make, to a renewable source, then it may not be there. So essentially, the problem is getting worse because we're getting more data centers, which again is like a city's worth of load coming onto the grid. We're getting more data centers, we're getting more demand, and we don't have the supply to keep up. And we're probably going to be outstripped of supply by early 2032 or 2033. So it's quickly approaching us. And really the only organization, I shouldn't say the only organization, PJM manages the grid. They're not in charge of making the rules. So it's up to the states to make those rules. And the states kind of farm it out to these membership organizations that are there. So we're kind of right where we started, 2 years ago when this was flagged as an issue. And in the meantime, we're going to see a lot of the same as far as our electricity rates go, the fluctuations for the seasons. There's a lot of critics of clean energy programs that are saying that if we don't do something about our supply and demand, that we're going to see prices increase as much as 30% over the next 10 years. So that would be a significant amount on a lot of people's bills, and not just, a regular bill payer like you and I, but businesses and industrial sites. And when those costs rise, it trickles down to the rest of us. So, it is a big deal. It's a complicated issue. And unfortunately, we're not any closer to solving it.
I know in her article, Lauren wrote about how renewables can go up fast, whereas it takes longer for natural gas. The renewable energy that we have currently isn't even as it goes up fast, isn't enough to meet the speed that our data centers are being built. From everything I've gathered, writing about the state, the government, there's a strong appetite to get more and more of these data centers. Still, it doesn't seem to, the power problem doesn't seem to be deterring anything, even though it's always, part of the conversation and top of mind. Do you think that there's any balance in sight for this?
No, because, our governor, for example, was definitely not going to turn down deals from Amazon and Microsoft to power data centers here. And he sees that as really a huge part of Pennsylvania's future. And, realistically, we are a great place to have a lot of data centers because we have a lot of the energy production here. So we have the power plants, the, nuclear plants that can be right near these data centers and power them and give them the supply that they need. And the problem with it is that we don't even have enough of those resources. So you're, from an outsider perspective, you'd be asking the governor and lawmakers to kind of say to these massive companies with billions of dollars to spend, you can't come here because we just, we don't know how we're going to give all this power to you. It's kind of like, build it and they will come situation, a very optimistic one at that. So I think like most things, follow the money. The money is, economic growth, the development that comes from it is being prioritized. And there's a hope and a wish and a prayer that we're going to figure out a way to get there. And, to lawmakers' credit, to PJM's credit, we were in a similar place when we were making the coal to gas transition 20 years ago. And there was a lot of fear about how we would do that. Would we do it too quickly? Would we have enough supply to meet the demand? A lot of the same themes. And that worked out. We were fine. We made that transition. Pennsylvania benefited a lot from that. We're still weighing the environmental impacts of what happened there. Data centers are probably going to be no different in that way, but it's not to say it's not like this big, catastrophe waiting to happen. It's just that it's still a huge question mark and the data centers are rolling in and the power supply is not.
Well, it should be interesting. I know I've covered some Pennsylvania state legislative ideas about small nuclear modular reactors, which aren't actually online yet, but maybe that'll,
yeah,
make a big difference.
Right. And it's, that's something, I don't think that's something we would have talked about even 2 or 3 years ago or however long, maybe TMI when it, decommissioned was 5 years ago now. It felt like nuclear was on its way out. Now all of a sudden we're looking and being like, well, maybe we should bring it back. So that just goes to show how much the data center and AI explosion has just changed the conversation, changed expectations, and really seems to have caught our power grid off guard.
Well, thanks, Kristen. We will certainly keep covering power in Pennsylvania and beyond. For this and more, you can follow us at thecentersquare.com/Pennsylvania. Have a great day and happy Thanksgiving.